As mentioned, I'm Scott Eblen. I'm the Director of Product Management for video at Twitter. And today I'd like to share some perspective on Twitter's foray into video, how we got here, what we learned, and where we think we're going with this. Now, many of you probably know that last spring, Twitter bid for broadcasting 10 games of the National Football League globally. And National Football League is one of the biggest brands in the US. It's a huge TV franchise. It's got amazing viewership, amazing interest from sponsors and customers. And I think if a few years ago you had said, Twitter is going to be broadcasting the National Football League, a lot of people would have looked at you a little bit funny. Because this is long-form content at its best, and as the name says, it's long. And Twitter is the essence of brevity, 140 characters. So how do these two things connect? So to explain this, I want to highlight that there's this opportunity that Twitter identified. And how we got to this came through the traditional software development process of doing user research and trying to find underlying problems where we thought there was an opportunity for Twitter to help. So as with all research, we sent our user researchers out to look at people watching TV, watching events, watching sports. And very early on, our user researchers came back and said, this is weird. And the reason they said it was weird is because they were watching people watch sports. And if you've ever watched a single person watching something, it doesn't really feel like sports. It's kind of like what everyone was complaining about at the Olympics, when there wasn't anyone in the stands. There was no anticipation. There was no excitement. There was no energy. There was no conversation. All of that was missing. And sports doesn't really feel like that, like real sports, until you get the roar of the crowd. So that was the first observation, that in sports, the roar of the crowd is critical to having a great experience. Now, sports isn't the only thing that Twitter has broadcast. So we spend a little time looking at other fields as well. Entertainment, television, red carpet events. And again, the researchers watched how people interacted and engaged with these before, during, and after. And if someone is just in isolation watching these things, it's kind of a sad experience. Maybe you can see a celebrity walking down the red carpet, but what people really crave is the 500 perspectives on the red carpet about what everyone thinks, all the different perspectives. For television, people want to be predicting what's going to happen. They want to guess what's going to happen in the next episode and speculate about how the characters are going to interact. It's those conversations, it's the interactions which really make entertainment so wonderful to watch. And politics. There's some people that love politics and get really engaged, but I think for a lot of people, politicians alone or political events are perhaps not that interesting. But if you get the hundreds of different perspectives around these things, the crowds, the noise, the perspective, that's what makes it a very interesting experience to engage with. And for better or worse, I think there was some validation of this in recent months when one US politician got very upset about crowds. But I think that highlights that crowds do matter. People care about that. So I think it's really clear that people want the roar of the crowd when they're watching sports, when they're watching events, when they're watching television. And this naturally raises the question of, where is that conversation? Where is the roar of the crowd? Well, television is just one sort of subset of the things which are happening today. And there are over 15 million tweets every single day about television. So there's clearly a lot of conversation happening in real time about what people are watching. And most Twitter users, or about half of Twitter users, are actually watching TV with Twitter in their hands. So they're talking and engaging while they're watching. And just to make this a little bit more concrete, by the time I finish in about 20 minutes, there will be over 8,000 tweets which have been generated just about tune-in to television. So I think it's really clear that there is plenty of conversation, there's plenty of that roar of the crowd happening right now in real time about everything, and especially about television. So there's this fantastic opportunity that people crave the roar of the crowd, and they crave that conversation when they're watching things, and that conversation is already on Twitter. So given this insight, we felt there was a fantastic opportunity for broadcasting the NFL and creating a better experience for watching football, American football, and for watching many other types of events on Twitter. Video plus conversation is a better experience. So given that insight, what did we build? So we started last May when we got the contract for the NFL, and we were on a super accelerated time frame. And very quickly, we built an integration into our mobile apps. So you could get the video, you could get the conversation below that, and we also made this available on web. There was also a call to action at the top right and on all these experiences to get involved in the conversation. And one of the things that I think is really interesting and novel, at least for Twitter about this, is people oftentimes, or some people have trouble, new users to Twitter have trouble getting up to speed and understanding what exactly Twitter is. But in this context, we are bringing together all of the conversation which is happening globally about this event. And the reason I chose to show some of the political content here is we did broadcast many of the political debates in the US, which was not perhaps the cleanest of conversations. And yet, we used a lot of machine learning to ensure that only safe tweets appeared below and around these conversations. And we didn't get any complaints from our broadcasters or our advertisers about this, which I think is a testament to the quality of the filtering of the conversation which went into creating this experience. Obviously, though, this is a television-like experience, and we weren't satisfied to just launch something on mobile and web. So we also explored the TV space as well. We launched a tvOS app. We launched something on Roku. We launched something on Xbox and Amazon Fire. And it's a variation on what we provided on web. Still a lot of focus on the television, but there's an option to switch over to the right-hand side to view the conversation. And we also tried some novel things, like letting people browse a slightly more visual perspective on what's happening. And so in this particular view of conversations about events, especially for football, we had a lot of people posting animated GIF reactions. And it was wonderful for people to see all the sort of pain and anguish and excitement and feelings of victory represented there. So it was really bringing together that crowd and emotion, and people really enjoyed that experience. And Apple recognized us for our efforts in this, naming us Apple TV App of the Year in 2016, which I'm really proud about. So that was a second key part of what we built. I'd also highlight that Twitter did some syndication on this. So this was a foray into letting our partners broadcast onto other people's websites. So we worked with people like Huffington Post and Time so that other people could see the content which we were providing with that conversation, but on their websites. And the value of that is it allows people to reach new and broader audiences. So it's really an additive experience to reach and discover new people who are interested in this content. Obviously, being a technology company, we were not satisfied with just saying, oh, video is video. And so last year, we actually acquired a company based here in London called Magic Pony. And it's a fantastic name. What Magic Pony is known for is video processing technology. And this video that you see here, you're probably wondering what's going on, because they actually, the left and right-hand side look pretty similar. But what's actually happening is the video on the right is being broadcast at half the bit rate of the broadcast at the left. And we've applied Magic Pony's super resolution technology to try and boost that back to the same level. And what's interesting here is this allows us to reach new people who perhaps have poor connections and allow them to continue watching the game. Or people who are watching regular connections, we can boost to even higher resolutions. So this is a little bit hard to see because there's one resolution, a half resolution that's been boosted back up. But in this particular view, we've taken a low resolution stream, same bitrate on both sides, and blown up to a huge size. It's a little bit hard to tell, but you can definitely see that on the right-hand side with super resolution applied, it's a little bit clearer and crisper, and you also get that with the players up top. So there's a lot of opportunities for video technology to do some interesting things. I just highlight that the research that team has done will also allow eventually people to zoom in on interesting things or move around and track interesting elements within the broadcast. So that's what we built, and we had a fantastic season with the NFL. One of my favorite parts about working at Twitter is you get tons of real-time feedback, and these were some tweets that we saw after just the first couple of days. Top left, I love that this was someone who is multitasking, being at a hockey rink, but watching their football. And in the top right, we had someone who was in Mozambique. So this is a fantastic example of how Twitter as a platform allows content owners to reach a broader and more diverse audience who they never traditionally would have been able to access. And lots of other positive feedback. People sort of inventing new use cases, being able to watch sports while they're out on their run, or being able to watch sports while they're flying on a flight. So that was the qualitative bit. Quantitatively, the numbers I think speak for themselves. Every single game that we broadcast, we had, on average, we had 3.5 million unique viewers. And in particular, I think that 55% on each under 25 years old is fantastic. We can reach younger audiences when they want to watch content. The 25% international audience is also great. I think, as I mentioned earlier, this allows content owners to reach new audiences, so it's an additive experience, people that they might not have been able to reach previously through their traditional channels. And the 12% who are not logged into Twitter, who saw it on one of our logged out experiences, the reason I think this is interesting is this highlights how this content has allowed us to attract new users. So there's benefit for Twitter as well in that we're broadening our reach and broadening our audience to new people. So given the success of the NFL, we quickly expanded and started broadcasting a lot of other content. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the political election season in 2016 in the US was ripe for a lot of broadcasts. We also started some daily broadcasts. With Bloomberg, we did a daily news show. We have a sports show called The Rally, and a lot of really big popular events, things like the red carpets, Golden Globes, the Grammys, were very popular. And again, just to quantify that, these are numbers from Q1 of this year. We had 800 hours of live premium streaming, over 50 hours per week of regularly scheduled content. And again, the audience was fantastic. We've had 45 million people watch live premium video on Twitter. This is just Q1 alone. And it's worth highlighting that the NFL content was entirely in last year. So this is a really great source of content, and we're attracting a lot of viewers. 33% under 25 years old, a little bit lower than we saw for the NFL, but I believe it's over 70% are under 35. So again, it's a relatively young audience who is watching television-type content on Twitter. So I highlighted what we built, why we built it, what the results were, and now I want to delve into a little bit about where we're going. So first off, I want to highlight that one of the things we're starting to change is we're looking into 24/7 content. This is the promo video for a deal that we announced just earlier this month with Bloomberg to do a 24/7 streaming channel with Bloomberg. We also announced a 24/7 streaming sports channel. And I think some people might have a slightly negative perception of 24-hour news. There's issues with 24-hour news. But on a platform like Twitter, we see this as a very different type of opportunity. Because we have so much activity and engagement and conversation around the news and around sports and around content, I see this almost like a 24-hour A/B test where content producers can figure out what is actually resonating and what is engaging with their customers in real time. So there's a lot of really innovative, interesting opportunities where we can work with the content producers to create some interesting new channels and let them engage with customers in different ways. Adding to that, I think it's worth highlighting that there's plenty more we can do with engagement. I've mentioned a lot about tweets specifically, but there are a lot of different ways that customers and content producers can engage with each other. One of the things we've been experimenting with, and we've done this more with our e-gaming broadcasts and some of our sports shows, is these real-time prompts to pull the audience and see what's happening. And this is initiated by the broadcaster. So the broadcaster can push something to everyone who's watching a particular show, and then get feedback from them, and ideally incorporate that into the conversation or into the show itself. So if you were having a sports broadcast and there was perhaps two broadcasters going back and forth about opinions on two different teams, they could actually pull the audience and see what people thought about which one of them was right about who was going to win a particular match the next day. It opens up a whole wealth of opportunities. Again, there are not a lot of specifics here at this point, but we are certainly experimenting a lot. A third point is there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of space for brands and advertisers. One of the things that I was really proud about that I think really demonstrates the success of this and how this can be good for both broadcasters and consumers is an event we broadcast earlier this month called Nike. It was Nike's Breaking 2-Hour Marathon. They've spent years trying to work with some of the world's best marathoners to get them to break the previously unbroken 2-hour marathon, 2-hour limit for the marathon. And just to spoil it all, they didn't do it, which was unfortunate, but they got a lot closer. They beat the previous records. But we were able to provide a platform for them to broadcast this in its entirety. And because we have a lot of very passionate runners and sports enthusiasts and Olympic fans on Twitter, we were able to target this experience to those people, and they were able to engage and talk about it and really feel like they were part of that experience, part of a world record-breaking experience. And another thing I'd highlight here is this is a relatively subtle feature that we've been testing in a variety of channels for a while, is this Hopf Commentary, or it's the ability to have multiple timelines around an event. So in this case, we worked with Nike to select athletes, commentators, sports journalists, people who had a unique perspective on running and marathoning. And so then you could switch back and forth to seeing what's the world saying about this 2-hour marathon record and what are the experts saying. So I'm really excited about how we can continue to work with brands and partners and advertisers to create some interesting experiences. And the final point, which I've really alluded to a lot throughout this presentation, is just Twitter sees itself as a partner. We are a platform. We've always been a platform. And we can continue to work with a very diverse set of content owners to create a variety of interesting experiences. And this allows us, or one of the things we're excited about is this allows us to reach a new audience for a lot of the content owners. It was actually just this week, we launched our partnership with the WNBA, which is the Women's Basketball League in the US. Women's professional sports in the US, and I think in a lot of places, has really struggled to find a big audience. And yet, we had over 1 million people who watched that game on Twitter. And so I think this highlights that those communities, those people who are really passionate about topics, they're out there. They're just hard to find. And Twitter has the information to help get that content to the people who really care. So we're really excited about how we can help various types of content producers get to a bigger audience. So to wrap up, I thought I'd actually take a step back and sort of figure out how this connects back with the theme of the session, which is broadening the appeal of television. And I think the right way to start this question is almost ask a semi-existential question of what is television? Because ultimately, television is just hardware. And the appeal of television is the content behind it. That's what draws people. And yet, people continue to talk about television, and I think the reason they talk about television is because there's an idea there, a concept there. If you look at all pictures of all pictures of television, if you look at the previous presentation, and I suspect the subsequent ones throughout the day, anytime you see that, you're going to see a television, and you're going to see a group of people. Even in sort of caricatures, the fundamental elements come out, and it's a group of people watching something. And so I would argue that the concept of television is social. It's people want to talk about what they're watching. And that's something that television to date hasn't really been able to deliver. But I think Twitter is really well positioned to add to that conversation and really create a better social experience as people are watching things. Thank you.